Okay, cool. Well, to start off, just say who you are and what you're here representing.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Webster. I'm the American Consul for Western France. I'm here to represent the United States government in Mission France to help honor the sacrifice of the 36 soldiers that died here at Pont Scorff and to honor their families that never stopped missing them and mourning them. And we were very lucky today to have representatives of 4 of those families join us.
And for you personally, what's the significance of a memorial like this being placed here to commemorate these fallen soldiers?
I think the larger context for this memorial is it honors the sacrifice of, again, the 36 soldiers and their families, and it gives a place for reflection about the event that took their lives, all cut too short. Any life lost in battle is cut too short, and for grieving families, but it also gives an opportunity for the people of Pont Scorff to come and to meditate and to think about what happened here, to think about the modern life that they have because of the sacrifices, not only of the American soldiers, but also of the French resistance. And I was very glad, especially today, that we had a member of the French resistance who was able to come and to participate. These types of memorials remind us that the ties that began in our revolution carried through 2 world wars, through a Cold War, and now as we face together a war on the eastern flank of Europe, this French-American alliance is strong, and it's still built on the same ideals of Lafayette, the same ideals of our founding fathers in US and France, and the same ideals that the men who died in Pont Scorff fought for.
Do you have any military family? I mean,
I do.
Can you explain your history?
So my late father was a veteran of the U.S. Air Force. He served between the periods of the Korean War and the Vietnam War. And my husband is a retired Navy reservist, also a State Department official. His father is a retired National Guardsman. And my husband's 2 grandfathers, one was in the U.S. Marine Corps in World War II in the Pacific, and his other grandfather, who is 96 years old, and we were very grateful to still have with us, was a combat infantryman with the 12th Armored Division who fought in the Colmar Pocket action here in France.
You have a question about what do you think about the American policy right now and what's going on in our government? How can we correct that? How can we make the values that these soldiers fought for, how can we make it matter today?
Well, I think these soldiers fought first and foremost for our right to determine our own government, and the greatest obligation we have as citizens is to vote, and to vote in a way that reflects our values and the values we hope for future generations. We're a country of 370 million people, and Americans have never always agreed with each other, but we need to be able to have an honest conversation, and we need to be able to live and work together even when we disagree.
And with the memorial and everything that represents, are there any lessons or things that we can take from this that you think every American should know today or should hear about?
Absolutely. I think there are lots of lessons that we can take, but first and foremost, and I think the American Legion stands very much for this, is that freedom is not free, and when we become complacent about the sacrifices that we have to make in peacetime, personal sacrifices in order to ensure that we are also continuing to fight as civilians for rule of law, for democracy, for basic human rights and dignity. I think when you see a war, that's a point where it puts in relief to you that the sacrifices we're asked to make today are very minor compared to the sacrifices that generations before us have been asked to make. And we need to step up. Vérité. C'est la vérité.
Hold please.
I can also answer that again if you want to, if you're going to edit it.
That might be good, yeah.
Okay. So I can try.
It was a great answer.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll try. So I think that there are a lot of great lessons that we can learn from ceremonies such as today, and first and foremost that the cost of our freedom is not free, and that's something that I know the American Legion certainly stands for and understands and represents. We need to be prepared to sacrifice and work as much in peacetime for peace as we do in wartime. And the only way to prevent war and to really honor the sacrifices that these men made is to be willing to make the small sacrifices that are asked of us as citizens to ensure that for future generations we leave them with a world even better than the one that these men left for us.
Do you have a message for our young people in particular?
I would say don't wait to become interested in history and in understanding where you came from. It helps you understand where you can make a difference when you see the many different ways that military and civilians have made a difference in the fight for freedom and democracy throughout the world. These are people that can inspire us. We can also learn from their mistakes. But most importantly, don't wait. Have those conversations with the older generations. Ask them. Find out what they know. You might be surprised. I was very lucky. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents and their generation, which was the greatest generation. And I did ask the questions, and I'm forever grateful that I did. And it's inspired me throughout my life to continue to try to keep the memory of what they went through and what they stood for alive.
Do you have any last thoughts, things that you wanted to share, feelings throughout the ceremony? Or?
I'm just very grateful to be able to serve the United States and to serve our country in this way. I think the ties we have with France are incredibly strong in this region, and I'm grateful to work every day to honor our shared past, but also to build a really prosperous present and to lay the groundwork for continuing to have expanded ties and expanded prosperity and security and democracy in the future. And I very much appreciate everyone who works towards that, whether they're in government, whether they're in the private sector, and cultural organizations, business. We all need to do our part, and when we work together, we can do great things.
I have a question. When the colonel of the U.S. Marines came to my class and he said that war is constant and peace is an interlude, do you agree with that?
I think that statement is about context. There is always war at some point in the world, at some place in the world, at any time. That is the sad reality. I think what I can't speak for my colleague, but the lesson I hear from what you just said is sort of what I said before. We have to work as hard at peace to not be complacent that peace is the status quo forever. If we become complacent and we start focusing less on our own responsibilities towards each other and more on what divides us, then we will slip back into the very war, the very thing that they fought that we would get out of. So I would say that that's the context that I hear when you say that.
And as we see what's going on right now in our country with the political division in our Congress, red, blue, what we just happened to our veterans with the burn pit legislation, and we see what's happening with the gun legislation, we see what's happening with the Supreme Court. How can we address this as Americans, that we make what these people, what these soldiers fought for, make it happen, make it matter?
Well, as you know, as a State Department employee, I am nonpartisan, but I don't think I need to be partisan to answer that question.
No.
I think all of us need to think about asking ourselves what we can do. And as I said, the most important responsibility we have is to vote and to make sure that we are not complacent and allow ourselves to be disenfranchised and rule ourselves out of the picture. We as voters, as citizens of a democracy, should not expect that every rule, every law would always go the way we want it to. That's really not what a democracy is, a healthy one. But we should find ways to try to work productively with people that have a different vision for how to get to what are usually the same goals of security and freedom and prosperity. It sounds simple. It's of course the most difficult thing, but it really does require personal commitment to do that.
Do you have a special message for our veterans that are members of the American Legion?
I do. First of all, thank you for your service. Thank you for all that you have done. Thank you for choosing to come to France and to help. I know so many of you help with events that represent the best of this long alliance, our oldest alliance with France. And I appreciate all of your support and your passion for these events that recognize your fellow soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and Coast Guardies. We can't forget the Coast Guard. But so thank you very much for your commitment, and thank you very much for your service.
Any message for Brigham Young University, who's here representing a soldier from Utah who did fall in this battle?
I would just like to say that your support and your honor for this young man from Utah was really moving to see. And I know that I have many colleagues in the Foreign Service from Brigham Young, and Brigham Young has also sent many graduates to the U.S. military, and there's a great tradition of service from Brigham Young. And so I really appreciate seeing today the embodiment of that service and honoring this young man today. Thank you.
Any last message for us today?
Thank you to the American Legion for coming and making such a moving speech, and also for helping honor the families that were able to come here to honor their loved ones and acknowledge the price that was paid here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.